Haley and welcome to my channel, and if you've been here before, welcome back. Today I'm going to be covering part 2 of the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia. And if you haven't seen my part 1, then I highly suggest going back and watching it just so you're all caught up and you know what's going on. Alright, with all that being said, let's get started. Okay, so where we last left off, Elizabeth had just moved back to California, and she was living in Los Angeles. As far as her living situation at the time, she would stay somewhere for a couple of weeks to a month, and then when it came time to pay rent, she would gather up all her things and slide out the back door, moving on to a new place, ultimately to do the same thing. She did this because she didn't have enough money to live anywhere permanently at the time. One place, though, that Elizabeth found herself returning to time and time again was the home of a man named Mark Handsome. Handsome was a Denmark native who was living in Los Angeles at the time and was actually co-owner of a popular nightclub called the Florentine Gardens nightclub. It was known to be the place where on any given night you could go and find some of LA's biggest stars, high-profile gangsters, and businessmen rubbing elbows. It was a place where people from all walks of life came to let loose and have a good time. And Handsome himself relished the fact that due to his position as co-owner of the club, he was able to make connections with such important people. It was also widely known that the Florentine Gardens nightclub only hired the most beautiful girls to dance and serve their tables. And Handsome himself was known for opening up his home to his young female employees, many of whom were down on their luck, and offering them room and board. But as we all know, nothing in this world is free, and Handsome definitely wasn't doing this out of the goodness of his heart, and he definitely wasn't offering up room in his house for free. The girls were required to pay $1 a day in rent, and if for some reason they couldn't make rent, they were required to provide sexual favors for him. Handsome was basically a predator who preyed on his young, vulnerable female employees who had nowhere else to go and nowhere to sleep, and he knew this and used it to his advantage. Soon after arriving in LA, Elizabeth and Handsome became acquainted, and he actually ended up hiring her as a waitress in 1946. It's actually been said that during her time working here, Elizabeth became good friends with a woman by the name of Norma Jean, who at the time was an unknown actress, newly married, and had just celebrated her wedding reception there. This woman would go on to become better known to the world as the iconic Marilyn Monroe. So Elizabeth at this time was still broke and had just been crashing on friends' couches night after night, so she eventually finally accepted Handsome's offer of room and board at his house for just $1 a night. It's also been said that Handsome, who at the time had become quite infatuated with Short, would often proposition her for sexual favors when she could not pay rent, and time again she would turn him down. Rejection of him pissed him off because he would see her out with a different man every night. Many suitors were known to show up at the door picking her up and dropping her off. Nevertheless, she always managed to milk him into letting her stay there a little bit longer, and each time he would always cave in and agree. This was a pattern of behavior that happened pretty regularly according to her roommates, who said that each time she would stay as long as she possibly could without paying until Hanson's patience finally ran out and he kicked her out. Just to end up back at Hanson's door weeks later telling him how she had nowhere else to go. And according to them, he would always take her back in, time and time again, this time hoping that she would sleep with him. Though he was annoyed of her at this point and her constant rejection of him, he just never seemed to be able to say no to the beautiful Elizabeth, who at this point he had become enamored with. So we are going to talk more about Mark Handsome in a little bit because he becomes a very important figure in the aftermath of her death, but for now we're going to move on. Okay, so at this time, Elizabeth actually left on a bus headed to San Diego, California on December 8th, 1946. Apparently she had told people that she was going to be staying with friends up there. But apparently she was actually found by a 24-hour Aztec movie theater employee sleeping in the theater. This employee's name was actually Dorothy French, who said she felt bad for Elizabeth, who had told her about how hard it was to make it in Hollywood and how she'd fallen on rough times. So the Frenches told Elizabeth she was more than welcome to stay at their house for a couple days until she got things sorted out, but she actually ended up staying there for more than a month. They ended up actually having to ask her to leave. Apparently, she just laid around all day and seemed depressed and unmotivated, and she wasn't contributing to the household at all, and spent all night out partying, so she left. And it was actually here in San Diego that she would meet another man that would become an important person in her life and death. Robert Redmond Manley was a married man who had noticed Elizabeth on a street corner in San Diego one day. He decided to pull over and ask her if she needed a ride. She apparently at first ignored him and acted like she couldn't hear him, but he kept insisting that he was safe and was just trying to help her. And she eventually gave in and got in his car. I don't know if she'd been standing there hoping someone would stop and offer her a ride, but there's definitely a good chance that was exactly what she was doing that day, and he just happened to be the one that stopped. It seems likely since at this point she had just been kicked out of the Frenches and didn't have a place to stay, and was probably hungry and looking for dinner and shelter. So anyways, her and Robert hit it off, and they began seeing more and more of each other over the course of the next few weeks. And on the evening of January 8th, according to Manley, him and Elizabeth spent the night together at a hotel in San Diego. He claims there was no sexual relationship between them that night, and there had never been, and that night they slept with their clothes on. So the next morning, on January 9th, she asked him if he could drive her to LA. She was going to take a bus to Berkeley to meet her sister, who was now living there at the time. He took her to the bus station where he helped her check her luggage, and then she asked him to take her to the Biltmore Hotel where she was meeting somebody. So he dropped her off at the Biltmore, saw her into the lobby, and left. That was around 6:30 p.m. that evening. Robert Redmond Manley is one of the last people who was known to see Elizabeth alive. So a little backstory on the Biltmore Hotel. It was at the time the largest and grandest hotel west of Chicago. It was a very glamorous hotel that was known for having very famous guests stay there, including Walt Disney, Shirley Temple, Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, Betty Davis, Ginger Rogers, and Jimmy Stewart, just to name a few. But it also had its dark side. The hotel was known for mixing Hollywood glitz and glamour with organized crime, which was common in LA for many years before Elizabeth Short ever walked into its lobby. The hotel's presidential suite has housed 6 U.S. presidents, royalty, and even notorious gangsters such as Al Capone and Bugsy Siegel. But it is an absolutely gorgeous hotel, and if you're ever in LA, I would definitely recommend visiting it. Its grand ballrooms even have 2 elaborate Austrian chandeliers that are so delicate and so priceless that they have to be hand dusted by the staff. And the staff have to climb up to it instead of it being lowered down to them because it is so priceless and fragile. Needless to say, the Biltmore was a place of great luxury and beauty. It was a place to see and be seen. And a place Elizabeth Short probably would have hoped to find her next meal ticket at. Because at the time, walking through the hotel lobby and bar, you would have found yourself surrounded with a wide variety of eligible men of means, who were possibly traveling through and staying for business, or maybe just meeting other important associates there. No one knows for sure if Elizabeth Short had been to the Biltmore Hotel before. All we do know is that this is the last place Elizabeth was seen alive before her body was found a week later. And it's actually said that to this day, her ghost haunts the Biltmore, walking around the 10th and 11th floor, still not at peace. The hotel's bar even serves a drink called the Black Dahlia in honor of her. The doorman who worked at the Biltmore Hotel at this time had given a statement to police that he had seen Miss Short in the lobby of the Biltmore Hotel, and it had looked to him as if she was waiting for someone. He said he saw a dark figure wave to her from outside as if they were beckoning her. This being around 10 p.m. according to the doorman. It was dark and he was unable to identify the figure who was beckoning her. But according to him, when Elizabeth Short saw this person, she got up, exited the building, and walked south on Olive Street. This would be the last time that anyone would see Elizabeth Short alive. So what happened between the evening of January 9th when Elizabeth was last seen leaving the Biltmore Hotel and the morning of January 16th when her broken, dissected, and mutilated body was found in a vacant lot in broad daylight? This time period is often referred to by police as the missing week. Because no one saw her at this time, no one heard from her during this time, and there was no contact between her and anybody else. So where was she? Well, it is believed that during this missing week, she was with the person who would ultimately end up murdering her, being tortured, assaulted, and having horrible, inhumane, disturbing things done to her by this madman. And after the discovery of her body on the morning of January 16th, 1946, Elizabeth would finally achieve a death, the one thing she wanted in life, stardom. And that is the end of part 2. Next time in part 3, we're going to be going into the discovery of her body, the investigation and media frenzy that followed, and the possible suspects. So until next time, thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any new content. So please remember, stay safe out there, and I'll see you all very soon.